Welcome to another video, Purple Political Talk here, and today we're going to be talking about how a Joe Biden victory in the 2020 presidential election at this point is very imminent. And we're going to look at different things in the polls. We're going to look at JSK forecast and talk about how this is such a likely scenario. That Joe Biden wins the presidency and by a landslide at that. So before we get started, please remember to like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications to get notified when I post my next video. So let's get started. So, I think at this point in time, we can all tell that 2016, I guess, was one very good year for the Republican Party, where they were able to carry states like Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, Arizona, Florida, North Carolina. They were able to sweep the swing states for the most part. So, here's the thing. We're not in a 2016 type scenario anymore. Donald Trump's not running against Hillary Clinton, who was severely unpopular. Again, we're talking about Joe Biden, who, is he the most popular person in the nation? No, probably Obama would have been a candidate they could have run, but again, they can't because of term limits. At this point, Biden was one of the best popular picks across the nation compared to Donald Trump. Why did Donald Trump win? No one knew him as a politician. Everyone knew him as a businessman, reality TV star, whatever. So, at this point, we're talking about a different ground for this election, for the first part. And also, some states are starting to trend away from the Republicans when maybe they started to near them and say, like, welcome, how are you, and say hi to them and try to experiment with Republicans. But for some states, they just did not like them. So we're going to look at polls and at the JSK forecast and just look why a Biden victory is so imminent at this point. So, we're going to focus specifically on a couple swing states, Rust Belt, Florida, and Arizona. Most importantly, but then there's more states that you can talk about. So let's start by taking a look quickly at the JSK forecast. Here's the interesting thing about this forecast. Essentially, Biden is sweeping in a lot of places. He's winning in Arizona, according to the JSK forecast. He's winning in Florida. He's sweeping the Rust Belt. He's winning in Illinois. He's narrowly losing in Iowa. He's narrowly losing in Ohio. He's narrowly losing in Georgia. He's winning in North Carolina. So he's sweeping a lot of these states, which is good for him. And when it comes to for him winning the election, he's been a huge chance of winning. At this point, the chances for this election are 83.4% for Biden, 16% for Trump. Although for Trump, a 16% chance is a 16% chance, better than 0 in 1 chance. And look, this is what I'm talking about. 344 electoral votes on average. So we're looking at a scenario where it's very likely at this point for Biden to win, and by a landslide. For some people, modern landslides are over 330 electoral votes, so it depends on who you ask. And this election is becoming with a lot more certainty, probably going to Biden, because before the pandemic, as we can see in this graph, we saw here that, Joe Biden was not winning by a huge margin, but still, a 50-40 chance is, or 60-40 chance, my bad. When it comes to politics, 60-40 is extremely close, I would say. But essentially, everything else slipped from there. And now there's only a 83-16 chance, which, is not good for the Trump campaign. And first of all, it shows us that there's many deep parts of momentum for Biden. Where did we see that? We saw his huge, he went up in the polls, essentially, when it came to, Black Lives Matter, that big movement, as well as general coronavirus pandemic handling. We can tell here on this graph that during the pandemic, or at least the early stages, it did not affect Trump that much. However, as we got closer to May, there was the first dip, and it wasn't as bad. A 30% chance was what he won with in 2016, and essentially everything went from there when it came to Black Lives Matter, and that's when you saw Donald Trump completely go downhill. So this trend, we've seen it started to even out a little bit. Once we have the conventions, it might kind of even out again, but a little bit closer to the middle because of convention and whatever. But still, very good for Biden. Popular vote, Biden's carrying it at this point, according to this forecast. And the chances of Trump winning the Electoral College, again, pretty low. So, I think at this point, looking at this map quickly, where are 3 places where Biden is leading by huge margins? Well, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. At this point, it's pretty much a given. Biden is leading by a little bit less than in or he actually is leading more in Michigan than he's leading in Nevada, a state that Clinton won. So at this point, the victory in a lot of these states, I think it's a given. And just turn that into the electoral map. Biden's leading in Wisconsin. He's leading in Michigan. He's leading in Pennsylvania. He's leading in Arizona. He's leading in Florida. And then everything else you could say maybe yes, maybe no. I think I'm missing a state. He's leading in. He's not leading in Ohio, is he? No, according to the JSK forecast, Trump is still leading in Ohio and the 4 states right there. And when it comes to North Carolina, according to the forecast, Biden is leading. So, I mean, that's essentially a landslide right there for modern terms, because usually no one wins by more than 350 electoral vote these days, because of how, like, intensified the politics are. So, I mean, at this point, this is a very likely scenario. And, I mean, that just tells us that a Biden victory is imminent. I mean, it's coming, because let's suppose that Biden doesn't pull it out in Florida. Let's suppose he doesn't pull it out in North Carolina. He doesn't pull out in the state of Arizona. He still wins by electoral votes. And if he could afford to lose, for example, Wisconsin, if he can win the 2 districts. It's as simple as that. I mean, however you put it, like, even in a Republican best case scenario, where they're supposedly winning by a larger margin, they're only narrowly winning. And if we see some polls, like in Florida, Biden right now, latest polls +6. There was a poll that was even. The latest polls that were from, like, good pollsters, I would say, Mason-Dixon had +4. We don't have a rating for this one, +7. So, I mean, essentially, that's very good. That's like, if you look at the RCP average, which has a lot more polls included, we see a Biden +5. So, that's very good margins, especially considering how contested the state of Florida. I'm going to make a video specifically about the state of Florida and its analysis soon, because it's very interesting. So, I mean, at this point in time, looking at the election, Donald Trump's not in the same place he was maybe 2 or 3 months ago. He is struggling. And that is not good for him, because, I mean, at this point, he's going to have to make a bigger comeback. I mean, ever since the election started, Biden was leading. When the election started, the map looked a little bit like this. Without Wisconsin, for the Democrats, without Florida, without North Carolina, possibly without Arizona, or it was like a different map. It looked a lot different. I think the Democrats, it looked something around this before the pandemic, I would say. Very tight race. A lot of people could have said it was the 269 scenario, which I could see that happening. And now it's turned into the Democrats are leading in Arizona, Wisconsin, Ohio, North Carolina, Florida, and I mean, at this point, more states could be added to the list. And I mean, at this point, just looking at how big of a safety net Biden has, even though the election could definitely change by the time we get to November 3rd, again, he still does have the safety net. He can still lose. If Biden loses the Rust Belt, for example, and he wins North Carolina, Florida, and Arizona, he wins the election. It's just where can he make it up, and he just has a lot of states that he can go and make it up to. And I mean, I think at this point, we can tell that Donald Trump's chances at the presidency are not very high. And I mean, if Biden continues to grow in polling in a lot of these states, like, he could win in Texas, Georgia, Ohio, Iowa. He sweeps everything. Best case scenario right there. And again, this is not as unlikely as a lot of us could have thought. And I mean, at this point, it would just be a huge landslide for Joe Biden. However, I mean, I think at this point, the likely scenario, like a lot of people are saying, looks something like this. And I mean, this just tells us that Biden does have a safety net and all of that. And I mean, looking at recent polls, not only in Florida, but in other states, for example, let's look at another swing state. Let's look at Ohio. Biden has been leading, and then in some House districts, the Republicans have been narrowly leading, okay? And here Trump was leading, but recent polls in Ohio show Biden ahead. Things can definitely change, and looking at how the map looks for the Democrats, very good for them. Chances of them winning are pretty high. If the Republicans don't win the state of Florida, going to be a little hard for them to win the White House. And just with that, and if they don't win the Rust Belt, they're also going to be pretty much doomed to win the White House. I think the Republicans at this point, if they win, it might be by a narrow margin, although things can definitely change. So, I mean, remember, things change constantly. The way the election is going to be held and all these different things, whether the USPS is trying to cheat the election and all these different things, that is whatever you think. And honestly, a lot of these things are going to be impacted the election. However, I mean, at this point in time, we're just talking the election, like if it was a normal thing, Biden's lead and Biden's victory is very imminent. So guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If so, please give it a huge thumbs up, like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications to get notified when I post my next video. Hope you enjoyed the video, and goodbye.